What's going on? It's Kevin Kenny. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Build series live here in New York City. And you know, the terms trailblazer and pioneer, they're thrown around quite a bit in the world of entertainment and music. But our guest today, our special guest today, is really all of those things and so much more. Vérité. That's quite the entrance. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. You have a busy 2 days ahead of you, it sounds like. I didn't know you're playing 2 shows at Irving Plaza here.
Yeah, tonight and tomorrow night.
Wow. And you're doing like a promo run.
Yeah, you try and make the most of your time in New York, and
Yeah.
I spent yesterday in bed, so I'm well rested.
Well rested, ready to go.
Exactly.
Well, we're very excited to have you here. I'm particularly excited because it's rare in what I do that you get to kind of enjoy both sides of the journey. You always get the front side of it. I always get to talk to, you know, artists like you when the album's coming out and you're excited and you don't know what's going to happen. And I got to do that last June with you up at Billboard. And now I get to talk to you kind of like 10 months later where the album's been out, a remix album has been put out, tour's been going great. You've had such a year. How has the year been?
The year has been great. It's really interesting, and especially because we talked I think the day the album came out.
Yeah.
Or just around then. And in making an album, it's this slow build, and you're putting it together, and you're doing press, and you're very excited, and then you put it out, and it's oddly anticlimactic. It's kind of like you just start a new phase. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that, you know, I gave the album the most life it could possibly have, but also continue to grow and build and kind of change and prep myself for this next phase.
Yeah. You're on tour right now, and you said something recently about tour's cool because you get to reinterpret the album.
Yeah. For me, writing the album is such a solo process. It's me in my head overanalyzing myself, and you think you know what you're writing about and what you're experiencing. And I think this tour in particular, I've been able to have a much different experience with what I've written and in sharing that with other people. And I feel like I didn't even know what I thought the album was about before.
You almost learn it through the fans, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting being able to see what people react to and how they interpret it, and being able to kind of play into their emotions a little bit.
Right. I'm glad you talked about overthinking or, you know, going over things again and again in your mind, because there's a song that appears both on Somewhere in Between and then also the remix album, which is Better. And that whole song is kind of like contemplating like why a relationship ended, and then somewhat arriving at this idea of like, well, maybe we're just better off, right? Like maybe it's just as simple as that. Do you yourself just personally find yourself overthinking things a lot at this point in your life?
Yes and no. I think in the writing process and as a human being, absolutely. I'm like way too hard on myself, and I overanalyze every thought that I have. But I think in my career, I have been forced to put that aside, and I think there is a very clear idea that I just constantly need to be taking the next step and evaluating as I go, and not really beholden to how I feel at any given moment.
Well, do you think that's a good or a bad thing, that preoccupation with needing to always take the next step? Because obviously a lot of anxiety comes with that. I think we all can relate to that, you know, wanting to advance in our lives, and are we going fast enough? Are we doing enough? But as much as there may be a downside to that, the upside is, you know, you've been able to accomplish so much as an independent artist, probably because of that preoccupation. Is that fair to say?
For sure. I mean, it's detrimental to my mental health, but really positive for my
the
career.
record sounds great.
Exactly. I think working and kind of grinding in that way is something that I was born to do and raised to do. And we were just talking in the other room how, like, everyone in my family is like that. Like, we all set our minds to something, and we all really just work until we get to where we want to be. And it's interesting being in the position that I'm in now, where after this tour, I have a dedicated amount of time to write, which I've never had before in my life or career.
Do you not write on tour? It's just too much?
I do, like, blurbs of writing. Like, I take notes.
Right.
And then I revisit and actually put effort into those notes when I get home.
Where are you going to write when you have the time? Do you know?
I'm going to come home for two weeks off, which means that I'm going to take 3 days off and probably start writing by myself, which is my preferred method, and then I'll go to LA for a month, and then probably do that back and forth for a few months over the summer.
You talk about your family. You used to perform with your dad, right?
I did.
Yeah. So what is you talk about your family having the similar mindset. Are they all musical, or do they have that mindset in other lines of work?
We all do different things. Both my parents are professors in different areas. My dad does graphic design. My mom does like advertising, marketing, PR. My older brother does data analytics and software development, and my younger brother wants to be on Broadway.
Nice, right on. You know, it's funny talking about the year that you've had. When we first talked, when the week the album came out, we spent like 5 or 10 minutes talking about Applebee's, and I was thinking about that today. Of like, we don't even have time, unfortunately.
No, that's
to talk
great.
About,
I'm like slowly waiting for the Applebee's narrative to die, but also it's an important piece to talk about, so it'll live on.
I think it's great though, because it's a testament to how much you've accomplished over the past 12 months. Where like this thing that was a huge talking point in your story just 10 months ago is now kind of, I don't want to say obsolete, because it did make you who you were. And for those that don't know and are wondering what the hell we're talking about, you used to work at an Applebee's while you were trying to make it happen as an independent artist in Times Square. But it's like, I was thinking about like, you know, that's a year ago, and now you're in Billboard magazine, you're in Forbes, which we're going to get to. We got to talk about that article. You just wrote that fantastic article. It's just incredible how much you've been able to accomplish all as an independent artist. Because really, you're outpacing a lot of major label signed acts. It's really remarkable. But let's start with Billboard, not just because I work there, but also because we recently had an issue, and I was flipping through the pages of it. Demi Lovato was on the cover, and then there you were, big full-page ad, and it says, "I am my own label." And I guess that's kind of your mantra, right? That's fair to say. That's kind of like, if you were really to get to the core of who Vérité the artist is.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't start my career with the idea that I would be running things myself and independent and really sustaining as an independent artist. But once that vision became clear and I don't like to say like I'm successful at it, but I am in a way, right?
Why wouldn't you say you're successful at it?
Because, I don't know, self-deprecation. But
you know you're successful at this, though.
I do. This feels like therapy now.
No. No, but seriously, I mean, that's fascinating to me, right? Because, I mean, like, I just saw on Instagram, you were posting, like, your 20th song to cross 1 million streams. Again, like, not to bash major labels.
No.
There's a lot of people that don't have that, and you have it all on your own. So you have to know that you're successful. Maybe you don't maybe you're not at the point that you want to be eventually, but you're doing it. You have to know you're doing it.
Well, I think what I've learned in coming back to the I Am My Own label is that success now more than ever is completely relative. And so that I Am My Own label was an advertisement for AWOL, which is Artists Without a Label, a company that I work with closely, who I did the album with and the previous EP with. And it's this idea that I'm able to sustain, and I am, right, if we talk financially, I am making money, I am recouping investments while maintaining complete creative control of my project, and I am the sole and final decision maker for what happens. And so, from my perspective, that creative control, while kind of being able to sustain, not only sustain and grow, is very successful in a world where most major label signings, you get a small advance and you have zero say in really what happens in your career ultimately.
Right. You talk about thinking so much and this preoccupation with advancing and just, being hard on yourself. Are you able to take a step back at times and just kind of appreciate, like, wow, look at all these people that came out to Irving Plaza in New York City. You know what I mean? Like, are you able to kind of live in the moment? Because we all struggle with that, right? When we're on this journey to whatever we're on a journey to, success, what have you. It can be difficult, right? To be like, oh, wait, I am doing it. Let's like stop and smell the roses, so to speak.
It's interesting. I think now more than ever, being in a position where I can sit back and say what makes me, what fulfills me as a human being and what makes me happy seems like such a luxury, right? As somebody who moved to New York at 21 and worked full-time and then worked full-time and ran a project and then have been, writing and touring and consistently releasing music since then, the idea that I can sit back and say, like, oh, as a person, not as Vérité, but as Kelsey, what makes me happy, it's like a very new experience for me, honestly. And so I don't know that answer yet, which is kind of crazy. I know that working makes me happy, and I know that sharing music with people makes me happy, and touring is, I mean, literally,
best.
it's the absolute best.
Yeah. You talk about, I'm glad you said Kelsey, because I don't know if I was allowed to say Kelsey.
No, you're good. I'm a
I
person.
wanted to ask you, though, about the relationship between Vérité and Kelsey, and why it strikes me is that, Vérité obviously is the name of this project, or this, you as an artist, that's Vérité, and Kelsey, obviously, your given name. But there's no, like, mystique with you. Like, the music's transparent. The music's raw. You're talking about real things that come from you. What is the relationship, though, tangibly for you in your mind, between Kelsey and Vérité?
I think now, like, if I were to start a project now, I would be much more comfortable saying, like, it's me, Kelsey. But I think when I started this project, I was a much different person than I was now, and I was not confident, and I did not know what I wanted, and I was younger, I was confused. And so I very clearly needed a delineation between me and the artist Vérité, so that the artist Vérité could go do cooler, more badass shit than I felt I was capable of. And it's interesting to kind of grow into that vision of, what I created for myself. And now, 4 years later, I know exactly what I want, and I know how to execute it. And I know if I don't know how to execute it, I have a team of people that I've put around me who do know how to execute it. And so it's a much different position to be in. And like 4 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to be on the stage having a conversation or like shake your hand as you walked into the room, because I was just shy.
Right.
And like not able to do that.
Do you almost, looking back now, did it almost take escaping into Vérité to become more comfortable with Kelsey?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just interesting, and that has almost nothing to do with music. That's just like as a human being. It's like I remember being in a room with like a lawyer and just like scared to walk in, because I didn't know how to interact with people professionally or barely personally, because I was just so antisocial and had such social anxiety. And now I can meet anyone at any time. I've been meeting hundreds of people after every show for the past month.
You also do these really cool, I don't know if you always do it, but I saw on Instagram you do these personal meet and greets. You'll pick like 5 fans, right, before a show. Can you talk about that?
So this run I'm supporting. So I did a few headline shows in markets that I don't really get to tap into when I headline or really support. It's like not a lot of tours go through Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I just wanted to meet people there in a way that, you don't have to pay. Just show up early and we'll hang out. And then you don't have to wait for me after the show. And so I think it's a good way to just, I think, like you said, I try and be very like down to earth and transparent. And so I want to just be on the same level as everyone and kind of welcome them into my world.
Yeah. Vérité is very welcoming, by the way, too. You call fans.
Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. The calling was interesting.
I got to ask, like, how do those conversations go? Like, hey, it's Vérité.
I'll tell the story of one person I called who called me and like texted me, sent me a message, and I called and I was just like, hey, it's Vérité. And they're just like, who? And I was like, oh shit, this is awkward. And then I was like, Vérité? He's like, I don't know who this is.
Oh my God. Was it a mistake?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely got a text message from that number saying like, you're my queen, please call me. So maybe it was his dad.
Why?
But in general, I probably made 75 calls over the course of a few weeks. And they're great. And
really?
It's just like fun talking to people and really random, and you ask them how their day is and you hope their day is good. And some people's day wasn't good. And I was able to kind of turn it around for them a little.
Is there an artist growing up that you would have died to get a phone call from?
No, I would have freaked out and not been able to speak. But I mean, yeah, I feel like
13-year-old Vérité, like who would she just like
13-year-old
fall
Vérité.
over if they called?
Probably Nelly Furtado at that point.
Okay. You're a big Nelly Furtado fan.
I'm like a bird. Well, you know what it is? They're just like staples of my youth.
No, I
like Michelle Branch, everything. Come on.
Absolutely. All You Want. I'm more All You Wanted by Michelle Branch. I know everyone else likes the other song, though.
It's okay.
I'm a big fan of Michelle
We can
Branch.
still be friends.
All right, cool. Let's talk about this music. We're talking so much about all this stuff that doesn't have to do with the record, but this came out last year. It's a fantastic album, and then also you did the remix companion album recently. And what struck me just initially is you are someone that puts a lot of thought into her art. The sequencing is totally different, and like the track listing, I should say, right, of the remix album. Of course, there's less tracks on the remix album, but I'm curious how the sequencing of that project, like a remix project, compares to the sequencing and the track listing of like your debut album.
It's just different. I mean, I don't want to say it's like less important, right? Because it's not. But I think you always just want to have an arc. But you know, I put a lot of like weeks of thought into the sequencing of the debut, just because you want to make sure that it flows and that it's cohesive. And with remixes, I'm oddly like just open, so I don't give a lot of critique or input. I kind of find people that I trust their vision and try and let them explore what they want to explore in a remix. And I think that's how you get really interesting results from people. It's like give them a clean palette and let them run free. And so I was really happy with the remixes that I got. And so I just wanted them to kind of speak for themselves in a way.
Right. There's 3 versions of Saint.
Yes.
On the, I think, 8-track album. Why did that song specifically command or deserve 3 different iterations?
So that was actually, Tiger Town did the first remix, which is so funny. They took it in this like very pristine pop direction. And then for the other 2 remixes, we actually did a remix competition. So they came out of that remix competition where I think we got like 1,500 remixes, like a ridiculous amount of remixes to go through. And I chose the first remix, because it completely changed Saint. It made it like how this day feels. It's like rainy and sad and like very muted. And then the second one was like the funk remix, which I just need sometimes.
Doug. Yeah, there's a time and place. Something we got to talk about before we get out of here is you're published in Forbes now. It's like, what can't you do, right? It's like you wrote this amazing article about really your story, but then also beautifully wove in, you know, just the current status of the music industry. I got to imagine you're Daniel Ek's like favorite artist in the world after reading that. With them
He did retweet it and,
did he really?
Commented on it, yeah.
Oh my, yeah. See, I'm telling you, I read this like they're gonna go crazy for this. But take us into that article. How did that opportunity to write for Forbes come about?
I mean, again, it comes back to like having a team of people who understand you and your goals. And so I think between me, my manager, my publicists, you know, this idea of wanting to have a very open dialogue about being an independent artist and just kind of speak to other people who, you know, in the music industry and out of the music industry who want to start something but don't necessarily feel that they know what path to take. And the initial idea of it came, I read another article that pissed me off. And I just, and basically the premise of this article is how Spotify is ruining revenue streams for independent artists, and independent artists are no longer able to make a living now that Spotify has entered the equation. And I tried to engage the author on Twitter. I mean, I literally just sent like 2 messages and she didn't respond, and it just bugged me because I was like, I'm the exception to your.
Like, what is engagement?
Well, no. I just like sent a message. I was just like, what would you say to somebody who's an exception to the rule that you're like putting out in this article?
That's very nice of you.
Yeah, I'm not a dick. Yeah. Or maybe I am. I don't know. And so it just kind of put a fire under my ass to tell a different story.
Right. Well, you tell your story, and you tell this amazing moment, moving moment in your life. Because what's funny about people, you know, artists our age, right, is we grew up with this vision. I'm not an artist, but people our age, I should say. We grew up with this vision of music and the music industry, and like, so you kind of, if you want to be an artist and you're growing up watching like Britney Spears or Nelly Furtado and these big pop stars, you know, like you develop an attack plan of how you're going to get there, and then in the middle of this plan, the whole industry changes. It's a totally different blueprint now, and you, like you alluded to earlier in our conversation, you didn't always think you were going to be this independent artist. You actually thought that maybe I'd go the major route. And there was a time in your life not too long ago where there were some offers being talked about on the table, and you thought one of them was going to come through, and you get a call one day, as I understand it, and you realize it's not going to happen. And you're crushed, you're on the floor, And then eventually, of course, you find your footing, and we're here today, fast forward a couple of years. But how long did it take for you to go from just devastation to realization of what you had to do?
A day. And it was a really dark day. But it's funny. I was upstate at my parents' house. I think it was Thanksgiving, or like the day before Thanksgiving or the day after Thanksgiving. And I was about to sign. It fell through. And I just remember, as somebody, I've worked full-time or a little less than full-time since I'm like 14, right? So again, like I know how to grind and I know how to save money and I know how to do all these things. And so this idea that this major label meant I would be able to quit my day job was like, that was the vision, right? Back then, that was the goal. It's just like, I can't wait tables anymore. Like I can't do it. I'm exhausted. And I got that phone call and I broke down. I remember, my dad's Spanish, and so he makes you feel better. He just offered me so much food. He's just like, can I make you breakfast? Can I make you lunch? He doesn't cook, right? He's just like, I'm gonna go get you coffee. You don't want it done? I'm gonna go get you some dessert. And I remember, the next day I woke up and I went to my management and I was like, give me a budget for what the next EP is gonna cost. I think it was like 12 grand. And I went back to work and I worked like 3 months straight. I made the money. And then I quit that March. And so it's kind of like the idea that when you're faced with a wall and an obstacle, it's like that's where my conditioning kicked in. It's just like, all right, well, what's the next step? Cool, I need 12 grand. Cool, I'm gonna go make 12 grand in 3 months. And then I did that. And I didn't see sunlight for over 2 weeks at one point, and it was insane, and I wanted to die.
And the rest is history, as they say, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think translating that to other people is really important, because when I talk to independent artists, there's always this idea that there's somebody that's going to come in and make things easier for them. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, right? I've added really important members to my team that make my life really easy. But that being said, just because somebody's not there to make things easier for you doesn't mean that you can't take the steps and constantly be pushing. Like anyone can go self-fund an EP. And I believe that so firmly. And so I just want people to know that it's possible.
Absolutely. I hope we have some independent artists watching at home, because that's a great message to end on right there. We do have the studio audience, and we do have questions to get to. So here's the first one.
So you mentioned this idea of being able to reinterpret your music while you're out on the road, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about what it's like to revisit a song or something that you've written for like the 200th time.
I think I'm really grateful to work with phenomenal musicians and a really great musical director who I trust. And like once you've played a song for the 200th time, it can get very monotonous. But every tour, what we try and do is reinterpret it musically as well, which gives the meaning of the song a different flavor, right? It's like if we're changing the drum beat and changing the arrangement and a little bit of the composition, it's able to put you in a different headspace. And so Weekend, which was on my first EP, is a perfect example of that. It's like sometimes I feel like I could never play that song again and I would be happy, but we kind of made it a little darker and incorporated some of the sounds that I used on the album into the live performance of that. And it's like, now it's more challenging for me to play even. So you just add in these little, I guess like challenging things to keep yourself engaged. And then, but you have to play it because people love it. And so I want to make everyone happy.
Right. You ever make like a sad song happy?
Rarely.
No. It's always the other way, right?
Yeah, I'm like,
happy song.
Yeah, I'm just like, this sounds a little too happy. I'm going to tone it down a little bit.
There you go. Second studio audience question.
Sure.
Right here.
That was an awesome interview, and I'm
hey,
really,
how are you?
How's it going?
Good.
I'm really happy that you brought up the same remixes, because I was one of the people that won the competition for that super.
Yeah, he made the sad
day.
remix.
Yeah, so I wanted to come out and say hi. And in addition to that, I wanted to ask, like you said that your writing process is super solo, and like kind of that's how you write your new albums. But when does the music come in, and how do you choose to collaborate with certain people?
It's interesting. I feel like slowly but surely you find your like musical family, and so it's interesting starting to write an album now and figuring out, all right, sonically, how do I want that to sound? And so I'll do a lot of solo writing and kind of have these seeds of inspiration, and then go through, when I'm in LA, like pure experimentation and meet with a lot of different people and see what fits, and then commit more time to them if they do. And so I feel like a lot of this album was produced by the same 3 producers in certain parts. And so it's like figuring out what elements you want to add and who's most equipped to add them.
That might be a build first, by the way. Somebody on the record, just hanging out in the studio. Well, what remix did you do?
So I did the Saint remix that won one of the competitions.
Okay.
It's like
just like if you're watching home, like and they're looking for which one.
It's like the Saint Panache remix. So
right,
you can look it up on Verité's page.
It's great.
Right on. Cool. Very nice. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Last studio audience question.
Hi, thank you for being here. I really loved your breakthrough story through Applebee's and then becoming a great independent artist with over 1 million Spotify hits. I was wondering where, if you had the chance to collaborate with anybody, who would you want to collaborate with?
Whew. Anybody.
Say Nelly Furtado.
No. I mean, if that's on the table, I won't deny it. If we can get Timbaland in there as well, even better.
Everybody's promiscuous.
I feel like Donald Glover, Childish Gambino. I mean, I would do anything with him. I feel like I would act for him. I would, that would be awkward. But seriously, I think he's just such an imaginative, creative person, and I think sometimes I need my boundaries pushed musically and artistically, and I think he would do that.
I'm down for a Redbone Vérité remix. I'm just gonna put that into the universe.
I mean, I did cover Sober. I mean, a while ago, probably like 2 years ago now. So, Donald Glover, if you're listening, I'm here.
If you're watching right now, Donald, wherever you are.
Yeah, just like say it to the sky.
Yeah, exactly. He's listening. He's always listening. Well, thank you so much for stopping by on that
Thank
weird
you.
note to end on.
It's the perfect note to end on.
If you're, is this sold out? Can we plug the show?
They're both sold out.
They're both sold out. Okay, so I'm very sorry. Vérité is sold out here in New York City, but you are still on tour for quite a little while, right?
2 more weeks.
2 more weeks?
Yeah, making our way back to Atlanta, which is a weird place to end a tour.
Okay, and this conversation ended in a weird place, so it's
perfect.
It's all on brand.
And Donald Glover's show is Atlanta, so.
I couldn't think of a better ending. Vérité, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.